Oh my gosh, it's very impressive. I had a speech, decided not to use it. I think in keeping with perhaps the nature of this conversation we're about to have and cluing together a lot of what we have heard, what we have seen, and how that may or may not have changed our minds or at least affected our thinking. I'm here as the Minister of Labor, and you're probably wondering what the heck is the Minister of Labor doing here at ONS. I do come, as you mentioned, Valentina, as a Minister of Natural Resources, which would have, perhaps my invitation would have been more direct. But the relationship here is very important. And I'm actually quite pleased that, despite his daunting graphs, I follow Paul, because I think he outlined on a macro level what we need to do. I'm here to talk about people. And even though, we are dealing with abundant resource wealth and technology and the marriage of the two, what they all have in common are people. So in a few minutes that I have, I'm going to try and not take up the allotted time, because I think how we discuss things amongst ourselves and questions we take from you will be more interesting. But I'm going to talk about people chiefly as workers, but also as consumers and then as voters. As workers, let me paint a picture for you. I'm from an island in the middle of the North Atlantic, not too far from here, actually, closer to Stavanger than in many parts of Canada. It's called Newfoundland. It's an island of about 500,000 people. It's a province of Canada. It also takes up a fair amount of the mainline portion of Canada in a place called Labrador, in a small town there where I grew up, Happy Valley, Goose Bay. And I represent a community in the capital city of St. John's. We have become, now, one of the offshore capitals for oil in North America. And I'm very happy and proud to say, even though I may be disclosing my age by doing it, that it happened in my lifetime. I was a young buck. I was a speechwriter for our premier, our governor, when we had first oil. It was only 25 years ago. We had a big platform out there called Hibernia. And I will tell you now something that I couldn't write in the speeches that I wrote for my premier back then, but we didn't know what the heck we were doing. We didn't know. We spent a lot of time over here, and we spent a lot of time in the North Sea. We spent a lot of time in Aberdeen learning. And what men and women managed to do is learn how to get oil out of what my friend Peter, who was the president of ExxonMobil Canada, said to me is the harshest environment in which ExxonMobil operates in the world. Newfoundlanders then took that and flew out and helped build up another extraordinary place in our country called Alberta and Saskatchewan. We asked workers to do something different. We asked them to figure out how to get oil out of sand. And within a generation and a half, they made Canada the fourth biggest producers of oil in the world and the fifth biggest producer of natural gas. Again, within a generation and a half. When I feel overwhelmed when I see Paul's graphs, when I feel overwhelmed by the task that's ahead of us, I am heartened by what we were able to do in a very short amount of time. One of the difficulties that we have, I think, as politicians, but also as those who speak often, frequently about the challenges of climate change and the challenges of being oil-producing economies and also oil-consuming economies, is that, and my political party in Canada has been as guilty of this as anybody. We've disparaged the people who make it possible, made them feel bad. We started using terms like good jobs to imply that they have bad jobs. We started using terms like clean jobs to imply that they had dirty jobs. The irony is that the very people who figured out how to get oil out of sand in Alberta and Saskatchewan and figured out how to get oil from the offshore of Newfoundland in treacherous waters that make the waters of Norway look like a still pond. Not quite, but it's pretty bad out there, let me tell you. Plus, we have icebergs, and we've learned how to lasso icebergs from ships, so that's a talent, which I don't have, but we've managed to do it. But what we've done is, these are the same people who are going to lower emissions. These are the same people who are going to build up renewables. These are the same people who know where on those pipelines to tighten in order to make sure that the methane doesn't leak out. And both as an industry and politically, we have managed to marginalize them. That is a problem. That is a problem. Because at the same time, and I don't think Canada is alone here. I know Norway is, and I'm sure many other countries that are represented here are as well. We are going through a massive labor shortage. We're going through a demographic challenge of a baby boomer generation that has now, post-COVID, decided to retire a little earlier. We are living with the fact that that baby boom generation and my Gen X generation decided to have fewer kids. So all those young people that we relied upon for hospitality and retail and tourism, they aren't there. And the ones who are deciding to enter into energy industries are going into programs like ESG, but they're not going into welding. And that is a problem. So we need to bring workers back. We need to make sure that they are getting into the programs that we need them to get into, skilled trades predominantly. We need to make sure that they feel good about what they're doing. Not only for that reason, but also for another reason. They kick out politicians like me who, if we make them feel bad. Back in 2019, we had, my government got elected in 2015. In 2019, we ran for re-election. And we managed to hold on to the seats, and I managed to hold on to my seat in Newfoundland. But in Alberta and Saskatchewan, where most of our oil and gas wealth comes from, we were booted out summarily. Not one seat left. Not one. Lost, I think, some good people, actually, but you know what? We probably had it coming because we were saying dirty jobs, and we were saying bad jobs. Not bad jobs, but good jobs. And we were not making people feel included. So they booted us out. I was the Minister of Indigenous Services, and the Prime Minister called me in and asked me to become the new Minister of Natural Resources, which is usually held by somebody from Alberta or Saskatchewan. So he asked me to go in and fix things. A friend of mine who's in the media said, "I thought he was your friend." The first thing I did was I got a text from the Alberta Minister of Energy, who's attending this conference with me and who has become a dear friend. She texted and said, "When are you coming out to Alberta?" I said, "How's tomorrow? Let's fix this. Let's fix it. Let's work together." And it's a long, hard slog, but this is what we got to do. So I'm here primarily at ONS. I was here to talk about and listen to just transition. It's a phrase, by the way, that we can use in this room, and it's a phrase that came from workers and came from the trade union movement, but the problem is that workers hate it. They hate it because that too has become laden with meaning that they don't like. They feel like we're all in kind of star chambers in Stavanger or Geneva or the World Economic Forum talking about things that affect their daily lives, things that affect their mortgages and their rents and their pensions, and we are not making them a part of that process. And what I have said to unions in Alberta and Saskatchewan, both as a Minister of Natural Resources and as a Minister of Labour, is you will lead it because we can't do it without you, because you know where to tighten the screws, because you know how to build up the renewables, and because you know how to lower the emissions, and because most of us in this room don't. We may in theory, but we don't in fact. So we need to keep workers on side, both to make sure that they can do the work that they do, but also that they continue to elect people who take climate change seriously. If you take climate change seriously, then please, you must, by definition, be pro-worker. They will turn people out. Because the third thing, and I'll add this one very quickly, and we're finding this now more and more because of the war in Ukraine and its effects on supply chains, is affordability. Nobody can make the assumption that all the work that we needed to do even before the war in Ukraine in order to lower emissions and build up renewables, we cannot make the assumption that it will be done on the backs of ratepayers, that it will be done on the backs of customers. They too will throw you out. So that's daunting, because someone's got to pay. And we're going to have to figure that out. I don't come to you with any answers. I come to you to implore perhaps two things. Firstly, what I've said. Do not forget how this affects people on the ground, but most particularly the workers in this industry. And secondly, we can and must work together on this. We have to. There is no other way. Collectively, I am amazed by what we can do together. And it was affirmed for me only last week when I was in Stephenville, Newfoundland, which makes my town of Happy Valley Goose Bay look like a metropolis. It's on the west coast of the island of Newfoundland. And a plane landed. And it was the German Chancellor's plane, an Airbus that perhaps was bigger than the size of the town itself. And the German Chancellor, along with an amazing contingent of media from the Financial Times to The Economist, and more importantly, with CEOs from Siemens to Mercedes-Benz, decided to stop there to talk about how Newfoundland, my island, could funnel a green hydrogen corridor to Europe. In my life, I never thought that would happen. In my time as a natural resources minister in developing a hydrogen plant for Canada, when we talked about blue hydrogen and green hydrogen, I did not think that green hydrogen would be part of my province's plan, of my place on the east coast of Canada. And yet it is happening. So get used to the tension. This is it. This is what it looks like. There's no flipping of the switch and all of this just happens. Emissions lower and we meet our targets. It will be messy. It will be tense. It will be to and fro. Get used to it. But I'm convinced, having seen the German Chancellor's plane in Stephenville, having seen my little island, big island actually, in the North Atlantic, become a capital in the world for offshore petroleum. And to be proud of that, to see what we have done in Alberta and Saskatchewan and to be proud of that, and to see how quickly workers in these industries can and are willing to pivot if you meet them halfway, can and are willing to lower emissions if you meet them halfway, and if you retain that sense of pride of what they have done and the sense of promise of what they can do. We will do it. We will do it. Thank you.